So a few days ago, FaZe ended up announcing that they were cutting nearly half of their entire roster. Banks, who is a longtime member and leader of FaZe, has regained authority over FaZe after being sold for $16 million to GameSquare. Now, if you don't know anything about the business world, basically another business bought out FaZe. FaZe was once owned by a corporation, but then their stock ended up tanking like really bad. And this was kind of a whole issue around FaZe. Like they ended up delisting from the stock market, so they're no longer public. And from what Google told me is that they were once valued at $275 million back in 22. Now, just looking at that, from being valued at $725 million to now $16 million, that's insane. Like that's millions of dollars gone right there. Like I still can't wrap my head around those numbers. How do you go from 9 digits to just back to 8? I mean, it's still millions of dollars, but still it's nowhere near as greater as it was when it was at 725 million. But anyways, I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about the kicks and keeps of FaZe Clan, and FaZe ended up dropping this video right here. They ended up tweeting it April 27th of 2024 called Control Alt Delete. So let's check it out. So that right there, if you don't know what that whole video was, it's basically FaZe showing their entire roster of the members they kept. Like for example, Adapt, Ape, Banks, basically all of these members right here are in FaZe. And those that say loading, I'll get into that in a little bit, but those are the new recruits, basically the new members of FaZe. And in this frame, you can see that FaZe actually put the members that they kicked out, or cut I should say. Blaze, Booyah, Seabass, Scissors, basically they got rid of half of their entire roster. And I want to focus on a few of the members, more of the OG members I should say. I'm not going to be covering all of them because then this video will just turn out to be 30 to an hour, and I really don't want to make a whole yap session about this. I'm going to be talking about Blaze, Kitty, and Rain. Now from Apex's video, he didn't want Blaze to be kicked, but he didn't have a say in that. How it ended up working out was there was a vote to either kick or keep Blaze, or any member for the matter of fact, and he ended up getting outvoted. Apex voted not to kick Blaze from FaZe. He actually wanted him to stay so we can go through all this whole revamp of FaZe Clan, but it didn't end up happening because he ended up getting outvoted. I think it was 4 people that voted on this, and he was just one of them that just voted to not kick him, and the other 3 ended up voting yes. And the reason why I mentioned Apex was because he was the one who had to make the call to Blaze, basically saying that he was kicked from FaZe. Now Blaze here himself, he ended up contacting Apex 2 months prior because he found out that someone inside of FaZe, or an insider, ended up finding out that FaZe had this whole plan of kicking a lot of members, and Blaze happened to be one of them. So he found out 2 months prior to this whole situation going on currently, and at first he felt sad. He kind of felt a little upset about this whole situation, but then he became excited after announcing that he was partnering with Walmart for his new chocolate brand that contained caffeine, basically kind of like a Feastables but with caffeine. It's his own chocolate brand, and he was going to be partnering with Walmart, I believe, for 6 months. And I mean, that right there, to me, it seems like it's worth more than a FaZe contract, if I'm being honest, in my opinion. Now, even though I did make a video on FaZe Blaze basically shaming his content, or his short form content, on how bad it was, you know, I do gotta say I really feel bad for him because he's one of the members that I really actually enjoyed from the FaZe house. You know, he was one of the OGs. You know, I mean, I don't know, without him, like I said, I don't know, because every single member from the FaZe house is just so significant, right? But I want to talk about Kitty. FaZe Kitty, I should say, is a Call of Duty content creator who was very consistent, and what surprised me was that he was very consistent when he played Call of Duty, and for him to be kicked from FaZe was kind of shocking and kind of confusing too, because FaZe was mainly known for Call of Duty trick shotting and Call of Duty competitive, Call of Duty content, basically Call of Duty everything. They had their whole brand wrapped around Call of Duty. And Kitty stated that he felt like he was kicked 2 years prior to this because he ended up getting moved from the Call of Duty content creation gap on their website, which isn't there anymore because they changed their whole website. They revamped it for this whole reboot FaZe Clan era. He ended up getting moved from the content creation side over to the Hall of FaZe, which is basically like FaZe's Hall of Fame, you know, the greatest of all time, or the icons of FaZe, I should say. And he also stated that he didn't talk to any of the FaZe members for those 2 years, and to him it felt like he was being blacklisted from FaZe, more so kicked from FaZe. And what stood out to me the most was that he only made $3,000 from FaZe itself, just the organization, not counting his YouTube revenue, his merch or streaming revenue, revenue, nothing like that. It's not counting towards this, just from FaZe itself. And that solely came from montages that he uploaded or gave to FaZe, and FaZe ended up paying him only $3,000 for those montages. Which to me, I mean, montages are cool, right? I mean, montages require a lot of editing, a lot of skill. And for him to be paid $3,000, it just really seems unfair, especially when you consider that they're $1 million corporation. Like, to me, it just doesn't make sense, okay? Now, moving on to Rain, he didn't technically get kicked from FaZe. He left the organization more so because he wasn't satisfied with how the organization was being ran. He ended up tweeting out that 51% of FaZe was corporately owned, meaning that technically Banks, who claimed that he got the passwords back and got full ownership of it, wasn't in full control. But he seems to be making all the decisions and cuts because, like I said, he recruited 4 members, which all have their own trailers and everything, and he seems to be the sole person around this whole concept who gathered all these people to join FaZe. And with a ton of members being kicked, Banks ended up recruiting 4 new members to the team: Blackboy Max, Jason the Ween, Silky Season, and Lacey himself, which are all IRL just chatting streamers. And I'm familiar with 2 of them, Blackboy Max and Jason the Ween. Blackboy Max I used to watch quite a few times.
I just wanted to be left alone, and she asked me would I let her tongue go in my anal cavity. Why would I unblock her?
Jason the Ween, I do remember him from one specific video where he just shows different phases of him. I don't know, it's a really stupid video.
3 sides you don't want to see of me. Number 1, you don't want to see me when I get angry. Ah! Calm down. Ah! Make it stop. Make it stop.
But basically, Banks ended up just signing a bunch of streamers, which I'm kind of interested in how this new FaZe Clan is going to turn out if it's just streamers and not Call of Duty content creators anymore. Like, it's going to be a new era, essentially. So what's the cause for all of this? Well, Banks stated on Bradley Martin's podcast, Raw Talk, that he wanted to bring back the 2017 FaZe House vibe back. Basically, like the New York House days, the OG days, the good old days where everyone looks back at FaZe's golden era. But this time, he wants to change it up with streamers. Although they're probably not going to recreate that same exact feeling from the New York House era, because I mean, it's impossible to create memories or recreate them, for the matter of fact. Like, for example, if you look at OG Fortnite, when Fortnite brought back the old map, it didn't hit the same. It hit different, especially because old Fortnite didn't have all these sweats and tryhards doing all these edits and 90s, as opposed to old Fortnite, which was just a bunch of noobs and like, it was just a fun game overall. Even though they brought back that old distant memory of OG Fortnite, it didn't quite hit the same. Now, I'm kind of getting a little carried away. This isn't about OG Fortnite or anything, but one of the things that Banks did mention was that he ended up nearly firing 75% of FaZe's employees. Like, he stated in the podcast that there were 140 staff members at the time, and he ended up firing 110 to only where there were 30 members left. And that's not content creators, that's like background staff and like other people who work with FaZe behind the scenes. And he also stated that he wanted to reduce that number, 30, down to like 10 or 8.
We're cutting all kinds of people.
Yeah,
I mean, we're cutting the roster down significantly. We had something like 140 employees this time last year. I think we have 30 right now. I want to cut that down even further to like 10.
Like, he's really trying to bring back the old FaZe where it was just down to around 10 members and they all just had fun uploading content and basically just making content with each other and, you know, making the best memories they could. And that's what Banks really wants to do. He just wants to bring back that old FaZe feeling. And I mean, to be honest, I kind of agree with that. I mean, FaZe did kind of feel like it was just in it for the money. It was just more of like a money grab organization rather than just a whole organization filled with a bunch of people who just created content and had fun. Like, for example, like the LA house, right? That's when they were vlogging and having fun. But then after a while, they started getting into more of like the business cycle, the whole business scheme where they were ran by a corporation, they were ran by other people. From what all the FaZe members, because I watched a lot of the FaZe members' response on this, they all said that the leaders ended up taking advantage of them. They ended up taking money for themselves and they weren't actually putting the money into the company, which is what the original FaZe members wanted to do. They wanted to improve on the brand. They didn't want the brand to turn into what it is now. So that's why Banks is kind of taking over the seat and just really revamping and rebooting. That's why he's kind of starting from fresh, only having like around 10 to 14 members. I don't believe that the OG should have been kicked because after all, they were literally making FaZe. They made it to what it is essentially. They were part of FaZe's come up, FaZe Blaze, FaZe Rain, FaZe Kitty, like all the OG members. I feel like they should have had a say in this reboot right here, okay? Now I know Apex said that he didn't want Blaze to leave or anything like that. I don't believe that they should have been kicked whatsoever. Because after all, they grew up in the New York FaZe house, and to me, that's when FaZe was at its prime. That's when I watched FaZe a lot. That's when I would say FaZe was at its peak, okay? And of course, you have other exceptions like their trick shotting era or their Fortnite era, but mainly the New York FaZe house was the most memorable one for me. Now, I do find it unfair that they did end up kicking them, because after all, they did make FaZe to what it is essentially. They kind of grew with it all the way to the top. But I'm very curious to hear your guys' opinions on this. Now, like I said, this is just my opinion, so don't take it serious or don't take it the wrong way. You know, you guys are welcome to have your own opinions. If you guys want to leave them down below, I'd be willing to check them out. I'll be willing to read them. But let me know what your guys' thoughts on these. If you guys agree with this, if you guys disagree with this, you know, I'm genuinely interested in what this new rebooted FaZe has to offer. You know, especially with them replacing nearly their entire roster with streamers. I'm curious because Adapt, who's another OG member, ended up saying that Banks was quite hyped about this. He's quite motivated, he's quite confident, and this is probably the most confident that he's seen Banks in. And so, you know, I'm taking Adapt's word for it. I'm taking Banks' word for it. I really want to see FaZe, you know, grow to the top again. I want to see them create that old FaZe vibe again, not necessarily like the New York house, but just, you know, a bunch of guys just hanging around making content. I feel like that'd be pretty entertaining. So I'm very interested to see this. I'm not like super excited. I'm not like, oh my god, it's FaZe Clans, oh my god. Like, it's nothing like that, okay? I'm just very interested to see what FaZe has to offer. And yeah, that's gonna be it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.